What would you think if I told you that the moment you said I do, something about your value as a man began to expire in her eyes? It wasn't the vows, it wasn't the ring, it wasn't the honeymoon or the tears or the celebration. It was the contract invisible, unspoken, but deeply coded into her instincts. The moment she felt she had you, fully, permanently, with no more pursuit necessary, that's when the shift began. Slowly, quietly, like a room where the air goes still and you don't realize you're suffocating until you're already lightheaded. You've seen it. Maybe you're living it. You went from being the man she admired, the man she wanted to impress, to the man she corrects in front of guests, the man she uses as a punchline to her friends, the man whose time, attention, body, and resources are expected, not appreciated. And if you speak up about it, you're being dramatic, sensitive, aggressive, abusive. This isn't about women being evil. That's not the point. This is about a system of emotional incentives and power shifts that no one warned you about, not your father, not school, not culture. A system where your love, your commitment, your loyalty, the very things you thought would protect the relationship, are the same things that now render you invisible. Before marriage, you're admired for your ambition. After marriage, you're resented for your absences. Before marriage, your boundaries are respected. After marriage, they're negotiated down, slowly, until you don't remember the last time your decisions were your own. You used to say what you think. Now you ask what she feels. You used to lead. Now you comply. Not because you became weaker, but because the moment you signed up to provide, you unknowingly signed away your right to say no without consequences. And here's the part no one dares to say: love changes after commitment, but not in the way you were told. For a man, love deepens through responsibility. For many women, love is conditional on how you make her feel in this moment. Not last year, not last decade, not the sacrifices you've made, but now. And when you stop triggering that emotional high, when comfort replaces chaos, when stability replaces novelty, something inside her rewires. She starts to test you, not always consciously, but biologically, psychologically, to see if the man she married still exists, or if he died the moment he surrendered. You'll notice it in the little ways, the tone in her voice when she disagrees with you in front of others, the sarcasm when you express a dream, the silence when you ask for support, the way her phone becomes more present in bed than you are, the way intimacy becomes a negotiation, a chore, a tool, and you sit there wondering what happened. What did I do wrong? Why do I feel like a stranger in my own home? Because marriage, as it's structured today, does not protect the man. It protects the image of the union. It protects the fantasy. And you become the support beam no one thanks until it cracks. You're not allowed to be tired. You're not allowed to say no. You're not allowed to change, because her comfort depends on your consistency. Her emotional safety depends on your silence. But it didn't start this way. That's what keeps you confused. You remember the woman who lit up when she saw you, who hung on your words, who touched your hand at dinner just to feel close. You remember that woman, and you still see glimpses of her. But now, those moments come when she needs something, or when she feels you pulling away. Because the dynamic isn't built on shared strength anymore. It's built on emotional leverage, on cycles of withdrawal and reward, and the more you try to fix it, the more power you hand away. This is the trap. They tell you that a good man sacrifices, that a good husband puts her first, that real masculinity is measured by how much you can endure. So you absorb the criticism, you walk on eggshells, you lower your voice, you stop dreaming out loud. You say yes to things you hate. You smile when you're dying inside. And then you resent her, quietly, deeply. You lose the fire that made you attractive in the first place. What they never told you is this marriage without boundaries, without truth, without understanding the psychological mechanics of desire, becomes a slow erosion of the man. And the more you try to earn her love through obedience, the more invisible you become. She'll say she wants communication, honesty, vulnerability, but try telling her you're unhappy. Try saying you feel like you're losing yourself, that the respect is gone. Watch how quickly her face changes, not to concern, but to defensiveness, accusation. Suddenly, it's your fault. You're ungrateful. You're selfish. She does everything, and you're just complaining. It flips. You wanted connection, but now you're the villain. And if you push too far, she'll cry. And somehow, again, you're the one apologizing. That moment right there is when most men go quiet. Not because they lack courage, but because they realize logic has no place in emotional warfare. You thought marriage was a partnership, a place of mutual safety, a place where you could put down your armor. But now you understand your silence isn't peace, it's survival. The rules are different now, and no one told you. You thought you were being a good man by compromising. You thought keeping the peace would make her happy. You thought being open and emotionally available would bring you closer. But the opposite happened. The more you opened up, the more she looked at you differently, like something inside her couldn't respect the softness. Not for long. This isn't malice, it's psychology. Female attraction is often rooted in security, yes, but also in polarity, tension, the sense that the man is grounded, immovable, that he isn't easily swayed, easily rattled, easily tamed. The moment you start asking how to make her happy, instead of asking yourself what keeps your soul intact, she feels it. Not consciously, but biologically. The very thing you do to keep her is the thing that makes her pull away. And so you fall into the cycle. She complains you're distant, so you try harder. She says she feels disconnected, so you take on more. You plan things, you soften, you apologize, you over-explain, but nothing sticks. Because the more you try to win her back, the more you signal that you've lost yourself. She doesn't want the man who asks for permission. She wants the man who commands his own life. But here's where it gets brutal if you try to reclaim that energy, if you stop chasing, if you re-establish your boundaries, if you detach even slightly. She may call it selfishness. She may accuse you of being cold or controlling, because the control has been hers for so long. Any return to balance feels like domination. That's why most men stay stuck, trapped between trying harder and giving up. Either choice costs them. And then there's the legal side. You know the stats. You've seen the stories. Divorce isn't just emotional destruction, it's financial, reputational, spiritual. Men lose their homes, their kids, their sanity. They pay alimony to women who left them. They're treated like criminals for walking away from what drained them for years. And still, they're told to man up. No one tells a man how to survive this. Not the court, not his family, not even his friends, because men are expected to endure without support, to be strong without validation, to fall apart quietly. You thought marriage would give you a teammate, but what you got was a scorekeeper. Every mistake, every forgettable comment, every time you didn't read her mind logged, thrown back at you in moments of weakness. Because when emotions run the game, facts don't matter. Only feelings, only control. And whoever holds the emotional narrative holds the power. So how does a man survive? Not by fighting, not by pleading, not by trying to fix the relationship through more sacrifice. That's how you burn out. That's how you disappear completely. The truth is, You have to understand that most of what you were told about love, about how to be a good man in marriage, was designed to benefit everyone but you. You were taught to protect her heart at the expense of your own, to absorb pain so she wouldn't have to feel it, to be strong enough to suffer in silence. And when you did that well enough, they called you a real man. But what if being a real man meant walking away from the performance, from the guilt, from the quiet humiliation of being someone else's emotional punching bag? Because here's what they won't tell you the moment you stop performing for love, the moment you stop chasing approval and start standing in your own authority, everything changes. Not instantly, not painlessly, but permanently. You won't recognize yourself at first, because reclaiming your masculinity after years of quiet submission doesn't feel like power. It feels like guilt at first. Guilt for saying no. Guilt for not explaining yourself. Guilt for walking out of a room when the conversation turns into accusation. Guilt for not letting her tears dictate your decisions. Guilt for prioritizing your peace over her approval. And that guilt is the final weapon. It's the echo of 1,000 moments where you were trained to believe that her emotions were your responsibility, that her sadness meant you failed, that her anger meant you were cruel, that her disappointment meant you weren't enough. But here's the truth, and you won't like it at first. You are not responsible for her happiness. You never were. You are responsible for your clarity, your integrity, your boundaries. And if those things make someone uncomfortable, it doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're finally visible. See, marriage taught you to disappear, subtly, over time. You stopped doing things you loved. You stopped saying what you really thought. You stopped making decisions without approval. You even started second-guessing your own instincts. You told yourself this was maturity, growth, compromise. But what it really was slow erasure, and no one noticed, because everyone benefited from your silence. Her friends, the extended family, the social media feed filled with photos of vacations you funded and smiles you faked. But when a man begins to wake up, when he stops apologizing for wanting space, for needing truth, for choosing himself, the world around him gets nervous. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you're cold. They'll say you don't care. But deep down, they know the truth. You were always like this. You were always this clear, this grounded, this powerful. You just buried it to be loved. Now, here's what you'll start to notice when you stop playing the game. She'll test harder. The tantrums might increase. The withdrawal might sting deeper. The accusations will come. She'll say you're distant, that you're different, that you don't love her like you used to. But what she really means is, I can't control you like I used to. And that scares her. Because for many women, control equals safety. And when a man stops being emotionally compliant, it feels like abandonment, not because he's doing something wrong, but because she no longer has leverage. This is where most men cave. They confuse her fear with love. They confuse her anger with loss. They confuse the emotional storm with meaning. But it's not love, it's withdrawal. You were a drug. The drug of validation, of constant effort, of predictable compliance. And now, she's coming down. Here's where things get dangerous. Some women, when they sense they're losing the upper hand, don't walk away. They escalate. They accuse. They manipulate. They paint you as the monster. Because if they can't keep you, they'll try to control the story of who you were. That's why detachment is the only way out. Not anger, not revenge, not grand gestures or cruel words. Just silence, stillness. The kind of presence that doesn't beg, doesn't explain, doesn't react. You're not here to argue. You're not here to convince her of your worth. You're not here to repair a dynamic that was built on your emotional obedience. You're here to protect something sacred, your mind. Because once that's gone, nothing else matters. The biggest lie you were told is that being a good man means being emotionally available at all times, sacrificing your needs, and putting her at the center of your world. But what they never said is that this breeds resentment, not love, and that when resentment builds in silence, it eventually explodes in ways you can't control. Divorce, affairs, emotional breakdowns, addiction, depression, not because men are weak, but because men were taught that strength means suffering in silence. You have another path, a quiet one, a clear one, and it doesn't require her permission. It starts when you stop asking, "What can I do to make her happy?" and you start asking, "What kind of man do I refuse to lose, even for love?" That question will scare you. It will make you confront how much of yourself you've already given away. But it's the beginning of freedom, not from her, from the version of you who thought love meant disappearing. You're going to feel lonely at first, not because you miss her touch, or her voice, or even her presence. You'll miss the version of yourself that didn't know any better. The man who still believed if he just loved hard enough, gave enough, stayed loyal enough, she'd finally see him, finally choose him every day. With the same intensity, he chose her. But that man was chasing a fantasy, and fantasies are cruel. They don't die cleanly. They hang around in the background of your mind like a ghost, whispering maybe it was your fault. Maybe she'll change. Maybe if you had just done it differently. You need to kill that voice, because here's what they never told you. The most dangerous part of marriage isn't her. It's the way you start betraying yourself to keep it alive. You give up your space. You give up your truth. You give up your silence, the silence that used to make you sharp, clear, focused. The silence that made you a man. Now, every moment is filled with emotional noise, arguments that go nowhere, tears that don't mean remorse, criticism disguised as concern. And in your attempt to be the better man, you absorb it all. You become the filter for her chaos, the buffer between her emotions and reality. But who filters yours? That's the real trap. No one comes for the man when he starts fading. No one sees it when he's dying inside. When he stops laughing, stops dreaming, stops building. You become a background character in your own story, and somehow that's applauded. They call it being stable, being supportive, being strong. But inside, you're empty. That emptiness is not weakness. It's a signal, a warning, a deep inner alarm telling you that your soul is no longer willing to live on scraps of love, on crumbs of respect. You need more than survival. You need sovereignty. That starts with remembering what you were like before you asked anyone to love you. Remember the man who didn't explain himself, the man who didn't flinch at disapproval, the man who didn't say yes when he meant hell no. That man is not gone. He's buried under years of learned shame, emotional micro-cuts, the slow, surgical process of being made smaller so someone else could feel bigger. You don't get that man back by yelling, or demanding, or retaliating. You get him back through quiet choices, by waking up early and moving your body before anyone else needs you, by saying, "I'll get back to you," instead of agreeing on the spot, by pausing before you justify your decisions, by walking away when a conversation turns into a courtroom, by recognizing that your time, your attention, your presence, these are not debts, they're gifts. And any woman who treats them like obligations has already forgotten your worth. You don't owe her happiness. You don't owe her your peace. You don't owe her a version of yourself that feels safe to her insecurities. You owe yourself this to never again betray your own clarity just to keep a seat at someone else's table. Because here's the paradox they never told you when you stop performing. When you stop trying to be liked, when you start standing in your truth without apology, two things happen. Some women will leave, and the right ones will finally see you. Not because you became more charming, not because you said the right thing, but because your presence now speaks louder than your performance ever did. That's the kind of man who doesn't get used. He doesn't get manipulated. He doesn't get guilted into submission, because he knows what he is. And when you know what you are, love stops being a strategy. It becomes a choice, one you make with your eyes open, from a place of strength, not desperation. This isn't about hating women. This isn't about revenge. This is about reclaiming what you should have never given away, your ability to walk away from anything that disrespects your spirit. Even if you once called it home, and now you understand the cost, not just in money, not just in time, but in years of your life. You'll never get back years spent trying to be enough for someone who secretly believed you weren't a prize to be won anymore, but a tool to be sharpened or discarded depending on how she felt that week. You didn't lose her, she lost you, the real you, the version she met before you bent, before you caved, before you chipped away at your own identity for the illusion of a lasting bond. But by the time you realize this, it's often too late. You're married, you're invested, maybe you have kids, a house, a shared life, and yet you feel more alone than ever. That's the cruelest irony, that marriage, the thing that was supposed to be your greatest bond, became the most isolating cage, because you're not allowed to talk about it, not honestly. Not without being accused of being bitter or weak or toxic. You keep your mouth shut because the world doesn't want to hear a man in pain unless he's apologizing for it. But you are in pain. You've been in pain for years, and you've had to wear it like armor, smiling through birthdays, anniversaries, family photos, pretending that the man inside the frame isn't fading a little more each day. Let me say it clearly, it's not your fault that she changed. But it is your responsibility to stop abandoning yourself to manage her evolution, because she will change again and again. Her desires will shift, her expectations will rise, her tolerance for boredom will shrink, and if you keep shaping yourself to fit her ever-changing needs, you'll eventually become unrecognizable, not to her, but to yourself. That's why men break. Not because women are impossible, but because men were never taught that love should have limits, that giving has a threshold, that strength includes the ability to walk away from what erodes your dignity. So now comes the shift, not a shift in her, don't wait for that, a shift in you, a quiet, permanent shift that doesn't announce itself. It just happens, subtle, precise, rooted. You stop defending yourself. You stop explaining yourself. You stop trying to earn intimacy through compliance. You stop negotiating for crumbs of affection. And you start doing something far more dangerous. You watch how she talks to you when no one's around. You watch how she responds to your success. You watch how often she initiates versus how often she demands. You watch how much of her love is conditional on what you provide, how you behave, how well you dance for approval. And when you start watching instead of reacting, you learn more in a month than you did in 5 years of blind effort. That's when clarity comes. That's when you realize it was never about being enough. It was about control. And the moment you stopped giving her full emotional access to your soul, the moment she realized she couldn't bend you, she began to test whether you'd still break. But you won't. Not anymore. Because you found something deeper than affection. You found the power of detachment, not apathy, not cruelty, just the calm, unshakable awareness that your value doesn't depend on how much someone else feels about you today. You don't need her to validate your strength. You don't need her to confirm your purpose. You don't need her to mirror back your identity. You are a man. That is enough. When you operate from that place, something interesting happens. The games stop working. The manipulation falls flat. the guilt bounces off. Not because you've hardened, but because you've healed. And when a man heals, truly heals, he doesn't just survive relationships, he redefines them. On his terms. You're not cold, you're clear, you're not distant, you're focused, you're not stubborn, you're sovereign. And no woman, no ring, no vow, no social script should ever cost you that again. She didn't break you. She revealed what you were too afraid to protect.